A funny taste in music with Andrew Bird.
All right. Oi, oi, oi. Who are you? Who are you? I like that as a football chant. Who are you? It's quite deep, isn't it? Just you chant that at a football player. Who are you? They're going to think, yeah, who am I? Who am I? Who are we all? What is existence? Bang, goal's gone in. It's done its job as a chant. Anyway, hello, Andrew Bird. Funny taste in music. Those are the two things I need to tell you. That's what you're listening to. This one, Matt Forde. Forde, he is a brilliant comedian. He's had his own TV show, Unspun. He's got his own podcast you should listen to, Political Party. He's got his own book called Politically Homeless. Really good book, just out, so get that. What's that? He's got podcast, book, TV show. He's got his own radio show, Rock and Roll Football on Absolute. He's doing well, isn't he? He's really... Anyway, now's not the time to get bitter. Anyway, and he does voices on Spitting Image. He's really, really good impressionist and mimic of... he does Boris Johnson. Without doubt, I think the best Donald Trump. There's a lot of Trump impressions, but his is definitely the best. Now, for this episode, I thought it'd be fun because he can do a really good impression of me. So this episode is just him. He's doing his voice and my voice for the whole thing. Right, so listen out for it. There's a bits where you can tell he's doing me, but the whole thing's just him. I'm not even on it. It's a joke. It's a bloody joke. I'm on it. So it's Matt Forde, and it's going to be Oasis heavy. There's no apologies. I say at the start, if you don't like Oasis, you can still enjoy the episode, but I'm not going to lie to you. It's pretty much Oasis. So if you want to leave, go now. Go on. Off you go. I don't need you. But please do donate to the Patreon subscription, and please listen to other episodes. But it's a really good episode, and Spotify playlist obviously goes with it. So go and listen to the Spotify playlist. Quite a lot of people have been messaging me; they're enjoying them, so that's good. I'm glad about that. I hope you like them. So it's going to be a great episode. So join me in a second after these adverts that are inevitable, and then I'll be chatting to my mate Matt Forde.
A funny taste in music. The interview next.
Right, I wanted to do a music podcast, but not talk to comedians about music, and I've really tried to not go too Oasis heavy and put people off. Do you know what I mean? You could go in deep with Oasis early doors and sort of alienate a lot of people, but this one, I mean, even the other week I had Rich Wilson on, and we talked about his mates who are in a band. We talked about that band and other bands for a bit, and we held off until about three-quarters of the way in, and then it was pretty Oasis heavy. But this one, there's no excuses. We're going in. So if you don't like Oasis, off you go now, listeners. Off you.
Don't like Oasis? Get the fuck out of here.
Bloody go. Yeah, you're off, mate. Shut the door after you. Yeah, there's no apologising this one. You were one of them. I thought, well, it's going to happen, isn't it? Now, now I was talking about you the other day. You'll be happy to hear this. I was on a Zoom chat with a couple of other comedians, and your name came up. And you might not know this, but you're one of them that when your name comes up, everyone's got a Forde story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did you know that?
In a good way?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that, no.
I thought I'd love to be like that. When your name comes up.
The story's nice,
yeah,
though.
They're all fucking pretty. Some of them were quite mad, obviously, but it's like, Forde, I remember this time. Everyone had one.
Oh, so who was on the call?
It was me, Jared Christmas, Barry Castanola, and Rod Gilbert.
Yeah. Oh, lovely people.
So we all had a good Forde story. I'll tell mine.
Oh, great.
I've told you this back to you about 9 times, but for me, it very much sums you up. It was Edinburgh. Imagine the scene. Yeah. 2000. You don't have to. You were there. 2005. And I don't mean this sounds bad. I don't mean this to sound bad. But at the time, because at the time you were flyering for our picture.
Yes, that's right.
So I didn't even know you did stand up. I thought you were like, because I didn't know who anyone was. I just thought you didn't know who was like promoters and who was part of all of that. So you were flyering, and you were like one of the best flyers on the Royal Mile for 3 minutes out of an hour. The rest of the time, it was just eating, talking bollocks. And Al Pitcher would come like a undercover boss every now and again, to see if you were actually doing anything. He'd always catch you like fucking sausage in hand eating, and just have that disapproving look on his face. But also, like, he kind of knew this would happen. But I remember there was so what it was, there was this girl, and she was sat outside a cafe, like on those tables and chairs outside, and she was with a bloke, and you could tell from their body language they weren't getting on. Well, this is what you told me anyway. You were going, oh, you go, oh, she's gorgeous. Look at her, she's so nice. Them two shouldn't be together. I can tell. They're a couple, but they're going to split up. You can tell. And you kept telling me, look at their body language. You can tell. And I'm like, all right, Forde, I'm trying to fly her. And you're just going on. And it's about an hour you've been going on.
Yeah.
And then you went, you said, like a fucking detective, you're like, I need to get closer. You went, I need to be able to hear them. So what you did was you went right next to where they were, like on a busy street outside a cafe. You went and got inside a phone box that was right next to them. And then you picked up the phone like you're on a call. And then you came back to me and you went, yeah, they're definitely arguing. I went, oh. And I said, oh, can you hear them arguing?
Wow.
You said, no, I rang the operator and I told her what was happening and she agreed with me that they're definitely going to split up.
Wow.
I was like, what
I have no recollection of that.
It was fucking mad. And then you just walked off and I was just stood there with Tom Wrigglesworth going, what the fuck was that? Yeah.
I think it was, there's periods in your life where you're just loving life. You can prat around a bit. And I'm not sure everyone gets the chance to do that in life. Life is really serious, and you come out of school, and if you go to uni, you do that, and then you go into the world of work. And as comedians, particularly when you're just up in Edinburgh flying, you can just sort of prat about a bit. I don't remember any of that.
Yeah, well,
but I'm really pleased I did it.
Yeah. You don't remember it because it was probably, a daily occurrence, shit like that for you then. It was.
But I would drink a lot in Edinburgh back then. I mean, now I barely touch a drink. But back then, when it was fun, and I think every new comedian should have those years in Edinburgh where, and obviously I was just flying, but the first couple of years you do it when you're not doing an hour and you're just doing, a package show or whatever you're doing. It's important to go and just enjoy it, I think. So I'm really pleased that other people have stories about me just being an idiot.
Yeah. Oh, we all had them. But I... And you're one of them as well. By the way you dress, you can sort of tell roughly what music you're into. People you look at and think, well, he goes to live gigs. Do you know what I mean? You've got that look about you. When you're off duty, do you know what I mean? Sometimes you dress smart, but you have that look of he goes to gigs that I like. And another one, I remember being on one of our Christmas get-togethers that we have every now and again. The aforementioned Magic Pants Pete Furman often makes an appearance. Yes. And I remember,
Legend.
Those great nights when you're in the pub and you're all chatting, having a really good laugh and a good chat. Everyone's having fun conversations that they want to be a part of. No one's like glancing over like, oh, I need to get out of this shit and get over there. Do you know what I mean? So I glanced over though at you. You were surrounded by Furman and I think Danny Buckler and a few others. And I just remember you were mid Liam Gallagher impression. You were, I don't know why, you were proper arms behind back, leaning into an air mic, giving it sunshine. And I don't know why. I just remember Pete Furman pissing himself laughing. He was enjoying it. But
Furman loves it. He's another big Oasis fan.
Oh, is he? I didn't even know that about him.
Oh yeah, massive, yeah.
He dresses like you'd think he would be, but I didn't know that. But yeah, so you were. So I knew you were a massive Oasis fan, but we'll just quickly talk BO. Yeah, before Oasis.
Oh, right, crikey. Oh, I thought this was going to be another terrifying story from my part.
No, there's been no mention of that. Although sometimes you're sweaty. You are sweaty. I'm a sweaty man as well.
I do sweat.
Me too.
I sweat easily.
Yeah, I'm a sweater.
Yeah.
I take a spare little towel when I go to the boxing club and I do weights after. I take a little... I change T-shirt after boxing and then take a little towel with me. And I tell people I'm a perspirer, thinking that'll get it. They never laugh. They're very serious while doing
No,
weights.
why would they?
No. So yeah, before Oasis, do you remember growing up the music you were into, like your first, like probably your parents were listening to, or someone or a friend?
Yeah.
Do you remember the first sort of music you remember being aware of?
Yeah, so my mum was into things like Gordon Lightfoot, Foster and Allen, Johnny Cash, Dire Straits.
Oh, nice.
What else? John Denver she really loved.
Right.
And we were church-going folk, so I guess, the first music I really was aware of were hymns and carols and things like that.
You don't hear that often these days. You don't.
So I still have, even though I've lost my faith. At Christmas, really, I don't think there's anything better than kind of carols.
Well, there is.
I think they just sound majestic.
There is that. We spoke about that before. That comes up quite a lot. That feeling of in a room, people all singing together. There's nothing quite like that, and they say it's a spiritual thing. I think that sort of accidentally they discovered that in church. Do you know what I mean? That would have happened if there was nothing to do with religion, because it does at gigs.
Well, it does, and obviously churches are built pre-amplification, so they're built to echo.
Yeah.
So they're if you think of it's almost like the story about Shola Amma getting discovered in a tube station.
Yeah.
The girl who sang "You Might Need Somebody," because tube tunnels are perfect because they're shaped like the palate of the mouth, so the voice really reverberates and sounds great. It's the same with the church.
I didn't think
all
of
those
that.
kind of archways.
Oh yeah, it's good acoustics on a tube.
So that's why the acoustics in a church or a cathedral are basically the best you'll get. For singing that sort of music. For stand-up it'd be terrible.
Yeah, well we've done some. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's awful. It really makes you feel for vicars. Actually, it's quite a tough gig.
It's a tough gig
speaking in these places. But yeah, so I guess religious music, and in a way that was a slight introduction to Johnny Cash, and I think that's what my mum liked about Johnny Cash, was that kind of God-fearing side of him, and of course he did lots of songs about God and judgment, and we had vinyls of him, he would do just vinyls of hymns, there's loads of Johnny Cash hymn albums out there where he's just singing old hymns.
There's hordes of them, yeah. I bought a Johnny Cash album just this Christmas.
I did. Which one did you get?
That latest one, the one with the Liverpool-based orchestra.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah, because I did think that. I thought, Johnny Cash with a full orchestra, that's going to be phenomenal. It was just out this Christmas. I've said this on the podcast a few times. One of my earliest memories of music is Johnny Cash on a Sunday, not religious. My mum cleaned on a Sunday. It was a cleaning music. So
what songs in particular do you remember?
I don't actually remember any particular songs, just the sound of his voice and that dum 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 that
dum dum dum
that
6'6". That's about Cash. If you're a kid, there's something and anyway, he has such a unique, commanding voice.
Yeah,
it's hard not to sit up and listen to that. So I loved the sound of his voice. 6'6", he stood on the ground. You're like, he doesn't sound like anyone else.
No.
So I was transfixed. So really, if I had to, Oasis are my favourite band, but if I had to pick a favourite artist, it would be Johnny Cash, because I loved him as a kid, and that love has only grown stronger with age. I just love the sound of it. There's something really special about his voice. So I got into him, and then my mum and my uncle, I think, shared... they like Johnny Cash, and they like Dire Straits. And I remember my uncle giving me a lift home from my granddad's house, and Money for Nothing was one of the first songs I really got into.
And you heard that in the car?
Yeah, I just remember it being on. I don't remember. It's not like he said, "Oh, we're now going to listen to Money for Nothing by Dire Straits."
An intro.
I just remember it was just off and on at that. Yeah. When I think of that time in my uncle's Ford Cortina, I think of.
That's funny that. Yeah, I've got a mate. I used to work in a factory, and it was about a 25-minute drive, and he had Dire Straits album on in the car. I think it's good car music. And
it's brilliant.
But he was one of the, when you have an album, it's in your CD player or your tape in the car, and it just stays in. You just don't. I think it's a good compliment for an album. If you don't take it out, you just leave it in there, just let it run. Gets to the end, you're like, yeah, I'll have that again. And that was that
so
Dire
catchy.
Straits album in the car driving, and that reminds me of
brilliant.
that.
It's good, and obviously we're a similar age, so that era they were massive. That song was huge, obviously. So Yeah, but the first music I remember liking that my mum was listening to was Johnny Cash and Dire Straits.
Yeah, I think are you a couple of years younger than me? I think you're a couple of years younger.
I was born in 1982.
Yeah, 2 years younger then, yeah.
There you go, you're right. You look younger, though.
I look younger than you.
Yes, because you're fit and healthy.
Yeah, but I've got a worn face.
Whip it lean.
I've got a worn face.
I've
always looked older than I am. Got a worn, rugged, wrinkly face, haven't I?
Yeah, but you know what it is? You probably looked a bit older at the start, but you've just stayed the same.
I'm hoping...
It's like people who go bald early.
Yeah.
They look old for that period, and then in time, they end up looking like the young ones.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. I reckon 50s, I'm going to even out and look pretty good. That's what
I think you already have. I think because you're fit, you're so lean, you look, that suggests an element of youth, real old age.
You make me feel all feminine and ladylike when you call me fit. Feels good. Yeah. I remember, Johnny Cash, and I've said this before, I didn't realise how much I knew of his until I watched the film Walk the Line. And how do I know every word of every song of this? And then my mum pointed out, because you heard it every Sunday growing up. Yeah.
And he did thousands of songs, and that was in an era where they'd all do the same song. So It Ain't Me, Babe, Bob Dylan did it, and he did it. There's Sunday Morning Coming Down, Chris Christopherson's got a version, Johnny Cash has got a version. It was almost like those old comedians, like Manning and that, where they'd all do each other's jokes. So they were writing their own stuff, but they'd also do... versions of songs, so that you've heard. There's so many songs where you go, I didn't realise that was done by Cash as well.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Some singers sound. I don't know why you appreciate them a bit more when they do a cover, because it's like the pressure's off. It's not yours, so just enjoy it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, exactly. And I think I tell you what I do think about Johnny Cash is towards the end of his life, he did those American Recordings albums, and if people haven't had them, they're worth looking up because. It's these sort of swan song, really. It's his departure from the world, and they're a mixture of new songs and cover versions, songs that he just liked.
Yeah.
And his cover versions of songs sound like they're some old discovered original. It doesn't sound like a cover. He does one by U2, and obviously Hurt by 9 Inch Nails, which was his big hit right at the end. They sound like, if Johnny Cash is singing that song, that sounds like he did it first, because it's so stripped back, and it's his lovely, deep... voice that you think, U2 must have covered it off him.
Yeah.
You can't believe that he's done a cover version that sounds... It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's that, those, I don't know if I've started to get into them, I'm not proud of it, but those reaction videos on YouTube.
Oh, man.
But the ones I like...
those two guys.
Those two young lads, because they're so young, but they give everything a good go. You're expecting them to go, what's this shit, bruv? But I don't know why they're English. They're American, aren't they? But when they watch the Johnny Cash one, and they're like, fuck it out, and they're like about 19, and they're well into it straight away. It just goes to show how good that is.
But also, I think it's really good. What they've done, those two guys, is brilliant, because these are two young, cool American guys, two young black American guys, and they've obviously just love music in general, and what it shows you is the one that really went viral was the Phil Collins one, When It's in the Air Tonight, and when that drum solo kicks in, their faces transform, and you're like, of course, that sounds great. So because it's by Phil Collins, people go, listen to that. These two guys are coming at it totally blind, like a taste test for a supermarket.
Any of the prejudice, any of the
no prejudice, no, and these guys are deliberately doing a project where I guess they're saying you can get into anything. I think it's fantastic, and when you see the Phil Collins one, you go, of course that's brilliant. I don't care if it's Phil Collins. That drum solo bit is brilliant.
Yeah, there's no denying it when you see it, because there's nothing better than saying to someone, I'll listen to this, and they love it. So to see it on YouTube, to just be able to see, even though you don't know them, is great. Watching two young lads who are, they're from, don't know where they're from in America, but they're completely different upbringing to you, and to see their perspective of Wonderwall, it's just brilliant. They've got one on Wonderwall, that one, Linkin Park. It's good watching them freaking out to Linkin, because to me Linkin Park's new, but you forget it's 20 years old now.
Wow.
But the other one that Johnny Cash did that I liked was Tom Petty and Heartbreakers, I Won't Back Down.
Oh, brilliant.
And Tom Petty said when he heard it, he wished that he'd never sung it. It's his own song. He heard it and went, no, that's how it should have been done.
Yeah, there's something... And I think, because of what Cash brings to it, obviously, is that unique voice, but I think for anyone who does anything creative, there's a real lesson there, I think the temptation is to always add more.
Yeah.
To get an extra little, guitar solo in, get an extra bit of a drum thing. Cash's thing is just to strip songs right back. And that gives them a real raw power. I think sometimes there's, for comedians, there's probably a lesson in that, in that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The basics. If you get the basics right, you don't have to, trying to invent the perfect routine. Just think about what's funny.
That's like when you do that, you do a bit and you keep adding a load of waffle to it, and you're like, why is that fucking bit not working? It drives you mad. And I ring my wife in the car on the way home from the gig, and that fucking bit didn't work again. And I can tell she's going, yeah. I've heard this 1,000 times. And then I drop it, and then a year later, it'll pop in my head in the middle of a bit, and you do it stripped back. You do it like acoustic, because you can only remember the bones of it, and it works again. You're like, because I did all that waffling shit. That's basically what Johnny Cash did. Stripped songs right back to what they should be. So so then after that, you got that would have been sort of, because we're doing these, we've sort of loosely agreed. Well, Jeff Innocent insisted that you become aware of music sort of about the age of 8. He reckons you then start buying it about 11, 12 maybe, and then you really get your own taste in music about sort of 14, 15, roughly these ages, roughly. So what age did you start buying music, do you think? Can you remember the first album you bought?
Well, the first album I bought, I'm so pleased I can say that the first album I bought was What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis on tape.
Brilliant. On tape?
On a French school trip. I also bought at the same supermarket Fields of Gold, The Best of Sting. Because I still, I still love that sort of music. Sadly, not sadly, I think it's just the reality of it. I would love to be able to say, I grew up listening to Johnny Cash and Dire Straits, then got straight into Oasis and all the rest of it. But I loved pop music. The first single I bought was Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You, and I think that was because I only had a quid and it was 99p, but I did like the song.
Well,
I'm not going to sort of rewrite history.
I think we all did at the time when we were kids. As a kid, it's so poppy, isn't it, as a kid?
Yeah,
you can't.
And I still love it. But I was really into, I loved Eternal.
Oh, yeah. I liked Eternal.
So they were the first. That was the first pop concert I went to see Eternal in.
Was it?
I think that first album, Always and Forever, is a brilliant.
Who did you go with to see Eternal?
I think I went with my mum. Did I? Or my mum picked me up. I went with some other lad from school. Louise had just left, so it was the Power of a Woman tour. I mean, it's so funny when you look back, you're like, that stuff was so sexualised, and as a young kid, you kind of don't pick up on that messaging, even though all the posters of them in negligees and stuff.
Yeah.
As a young kid, you kind of you don't quite get it.
No.
You just they must just have to wear that for the, maybe it was warm on the day they had the album. I was part of the Eternal fan club. I thought they were fantastic. I loved that sound, and I think that was probably just slightly pre-Oasis, It was, roughly.
Do you know who a girl band I really liked? That this doesn't get talked about much, admitting to liking girl bands. I don't know why, because it's weird that girls can really like male singers, but men don't often admit to liking female singers. Do you think that's fair?
I don't know. I mean, I've never thought of it like that. I mean, obviously, I didn't have a problem with that. I was buying Mariah Carey and going to watch Eternal.
No, you didn't.
Maybe it was part of.
But Forde, you're massively comfortable with yourself. We all know that. But
well, yeah, maybe because I was raised by a single mum. Maybe sort of I didn't have male stereotypes in the house or something. I don't know. Maybe I was less susceptible to that.
I was really into. I really liked All Saints.
Oh, fantastic!
And I've really not their last album, that was good, but the one before that, there was one a couple of years ago. That's brilliant. It's really good.
Well, there was that. They kind of stood on the shoulders of Eternal, didn't they? I guess they are to Eternal what Blue were to Five. You kind of you need that band to exist first and do that kind of quite urban sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still think one of my favourite songs of all time is C'est la Vie by Bewitched.
Who knew this podcast would go? I thought this was going to be just Oasis from start to finish. Fucking talking about girl bands and Bewitched. How was this happen?
Yeah, but I think you would struggle to find a better pop song than C'est la Vie by Bewitched, and I think it's got everything. And I'm a sucker for like Celtic, fiddles and things.
Oh, I just watched Shane MacGowan's DVD, Crock of Gold, the history of Shane MacGowan, how he saved Irish music. He saved it so much.
Wow.
Bewitched took it home.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm
a
sucker for a catchy Celtic vibe of a song as well. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I just think that sort of capture, and obviously Riverdance was a big thing. Ballykiss Angel, these things never exist on their own. There was a kind of like, if you think of stand-up at the time, it was like Ardlo Hanlon, Dylan Moran. Like there was a kind of
good point.
Irishness was big and cool, wasn't it, in the 90s? Ireland at the World Cup in 1994.
Oh, yeah.
There was all kind of around a bit. There was a sort of, I guess there was a sort of Irish version of Britpop where it felt like lots of stuff was happening at the same time. And I just thought, to this day now, I will still search out Bewitched, C'est la Vie, and listen to it on the bus or on the way to something. I just think it's perfect.
Fair enough. I'm not going to argue with that.
And I love the little bits of like dialogue in it.
Oh yeah.
People say I didn't like my dad. All that sort of stuff. It's done with real knowing humour. That song.
I liked the smallest one. I mean,
they're all small, weren't they?
Yeah, probably, but the smaller one.
So was she one of the Lynch, one of the ones who's related to Shane Lynch from Boyzone?
I didn't know their background that as much as you, Forde, but the smaller one, the bob with the sort of shorter hair. That's the one.
Blonde hair. Oh, curly slightly bob.
Yeah, I think so.
Curly Bob sounds like a regular in a rough pub, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Don't mess with Curly Bob.
Yeah. One-legged stew and Curly Bob.
Yeah.
I knew a bloke called One-legged stew. Anyway, you bought What's the Story on tape, you see, because I feel like I was just too young, weirdly, for Definitely Maybe, as in, I got into Oasis at What's the Story, which is weird when you think about it, in the pub, the jukebox, putting on What's the Story relentlessly, and some of the older blokes putting on some of the other stuff, and you're going, oh, do they do that as well? And they were like, what, Live Forever? Yeah, mate, yeah, they did.
It was only like the year before.
Yeah.
But I guess when you're young, a year's a long time, isn't it, when you're that age? And I remember Oasis kind of being around, but when you're young, obviously, pop music, particularly for our generation, was stuff like Take That, and I loved to Take That. I don't think I would have ever described myself as a fan at the time, but I brought their greatest hits, and I think Back for Good and I'll Never Forget again is like one of the great all-time pop songs.
Yeah.
So when Oasis first came out, I think I probably thought they were a bit too heavy for me. It sounded a bit sort of brash.
Yeah.
And it's really funny, when you talk to people who don't like Oasis and what they think about them, they probably wouldn't describe them as sort of edgy and almost borderline punk. But that, I guess to my young ears at the time, I thought, oh, that's probably a bit too heavy for me. I probably, at the age of 11 or 12 or whatever I was when it first sort of appeared, probably would have almost thought of it like heavy metal in a weird way.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because at the time...
And then I was hearing those songs endlessly, and then by the time What's the Story comes around, the sound has softened a bit and they were more mainstream.
Yeah, they went more melodic. And like Wonderwall was just massive, and then that's when like mums were into Oasis. Then I now remember, but no, I remember. What's the story? Yeah, Definitely Maybe was kind of, you had to be a real music fan to be into Oasis then, like a proper going to gigs, which you're not at the age of 11 because you're too young and you don't read NME at 11. a lot of people don't. But so then What's the Story was just, it was inescapable. The people who slag Oasis off sometimes forget that, like young lads of our age, it was kind of it was everywhere. So,
but you know what? The sort of people who slag it off, firstly, I think writing a catchy song is clearly the hardest thing to do. It's like scoring a goal in football or writing a great joke. It's the whole point of the exercise is to write a song that people like. And to write a song that loads of people like is clearly really hard. And you only need to listen to most music to realise it's very rare, actually, to write really good, catchy songs, particularly songs that people would like the first time they hear them. It's so... There's probably not even 1% of songs ever written that are in that sort of... in that Goldilocks zone. Yet Oasis were just churning out these really... I mean, even if look at some of the bands since, like the Arctic Monkeys or Kasabian or, the Killers.
Yeah.
It's really hard to maintain that really, really high standard. And Oasis were just dumping album after album and B-side after B-side that was just the catchiest music you'd ever heard since the 60s. And I think part of the problem was because they were so industrious, people went, oh, well, it must be easy.
Yeah.
But no one else has been able to do it. So it must be hard. And we know that it's hard. So in a way, they were victims of their own industriousness and talent, was that they made it look like, oh, yeah, this is easy. You're just ripping off the Beatles. And there's so much more to it than that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think people just don't appreciate how difficult what they did is.
Yeah, and I think some of it as well, they made it look easy, and they weren't, because Noel Gallagher's so unpretentious then. He was just like, songs are cool. You forget songs are cool things like Hello. You think about that now. A song called Hello. You're taking the piss. So people are like, fuck off. And roll with it. Stuff like that. You forget that song's called Hello. Track 1, Hello. So and do you know what? I always get confused when the albums are out. I always get mixed up when they were, because it definitely maybe was 94. What's the Story was 95. That's ridiculous now. And
they are two of, I think even cynics would have to accept, they're two of the best albums possibly of all time.
Yeah,
certainly of recent years, and certainly from this country.
Even if you don't like them, you've got to put them in there.
Yeah, and it's like, even when part of the problem as well that Oasis have is they were just so overplayed because you couldn't get enough of them for a number of reasons, and it's not just that the songs were great, although that is the crucial thing. So then they become, oh, well, I don't like Wonderwall because it's overplayed. And it's really hard to judge a song when you're sick of it.
Yeah.
It's like reviewing a meal when you're full because you're like, well, I don't want it now.
That's a cracking description. Yeah.
But you have to remember the first time you heard it, and you have to just try and be objective. And Wonderwall is a masterpiece. That is like Arrival of the Queen of Sheba or Canon in D by Parker Bell. That stands almost as a classical piece of music. It is perfect. And the way it's constructed. The drums don't... when the drums kick in about halfway through, the assembly of it is like a... There's an element of like musical engineering in that song that really lifts it to the next level. And I think it's fine to go, you know what, it was everywhere. I got sick of hearing it.
Yeah.
And aping Liam Gallagher's voice, which I get why people kind of find it slightly grating if you don't like it. But if you're objective about Oasis's output, particularly on those first two albums, I think really anyone being fair would struggle not to find a few Oasis songs that they would have to accept are brilliant pieces of music.
Yeah, yeah. So you sort of you were kind of aware of Definitely Maybe, but you massively got on What's the Story. Do you remember like going to house parties? Free house. Steve's got free house. And What's the Story was just on constantly.
The thing I remember when I realised I was in was I remember hearing Don't Look Back in Anger played for the first time. And I think it is the only song I can remember where I was the first time I heard it.
Oh, really?
And I was on the school bus going to school, and it must have been, I think they used to put Chris Evans on in the morning, so I don't know whether it was his Radio 1 or his Virgin phase. And they're like, we've got the new song from Oasis. And I can remember hearing it for the first time and going, oh my God, this is... It just hit me. It had my immediate attention. Yeah. It was like the first time you tasted curry or something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed in my life, Yeah. And what I also remember about that day is, and I remember the person who was singing it, I remember being in the school library later that day, and a girl called Christine was singing it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the song I heard on the radio this morning. And even in my young head, I was like, this is like immediately caught on, this song. I remember hearing her singing it in the school library that afternoon. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
That song is brilliant. People are already singing it, and it only came out this morning.
That is sometimes sometimes it takes hearing someone else humming along to something to really, to reaffirm to you how good it is. I know what you mean. When you hear someone else singing along to it, and it reminds you of them forever. So you still remember her now.
Well, it's like laughing at a joke, isn't it? If you're in an audience and people keep laughing, you're more inclined to laugh than if they're not.
Yeah.
And I guess that was the kind of musical equivalent. But I knew the moment I heard it.
And it was just...
I knew the moment I heard that song, it was for me.
It was just the soundtrack to that whole summer.
Yeah, and even the video looks like it was it clearly shot in Britain, but it has that sort of American feel, really bright colours, a lovely sunny day. And that was another thing that Oasis had was, firstly, it has to be about the music, because if the songs aren't any good, then all the swagger is horribly misplaced.
Embarrassing, yeah.
When people... And I get that frontmen have to have a particular persona, but obviously Liam Gallagher's had such an influence on a generation of people who want to be front men and women, and that's no bad thing, but you have to have the songs to justify it. And what makes Oasis so special is they were supremely arrogant, they were really funny, they were more outrageous, and they really told the truth in interviews more than anyone else. And because they had the catalogue to back it up, they were untouchable, so they could do that. But the other thing I really liked about them that I think really comes through in the songs, and where it really... If there are any things that are... where their appeal to me is beyond the music, it is that they are so optimistic. And they're upbeat, and they think tomorrow's going to be better, and I think that's so powerful.
Well, that's the thing as well, when people slag them off. You've got to remember when you're a teenage boy or girl, and you're thinking what you want to be when you're older, and you're in school, and you're sort of, like what am I going to do when I'm older? That doesn't seem such a big thing now. But when you're that age, it's massive. What am I going to be when I'm older? What am I going to do? And all over the radio and every house party is Oasis, and they're singing, and it's all uplifting, optimistic, and tomorrow's going to be brilliant, and you need to be yourself and stuff, singing things like that.
These could be the best days of our lives.
Yeah.
What a great line.
Yeah, in quite a just a throwaway silly song, and then it's completely elevated by a great line like that. But yeah, Oasis was full of that, and all their interviews as well. That's the people, like you say, Noel and Liam are well funny. I've said before, some of their interviews have made me laugh more than a lot of stand-ups.
We watched Liam Gallagher's Best Bits the other weekend on YouTube.
Yeah, I watch them all the time.
It's a well-worn video in this house. But I love there's so many great... Liam Gallagher doesn't get the credit for being the surrealist that he is. The kind of generic Liam Gallagher impression, oh, fuck off, like top kid. He has a brilliant surrealist brain with a really unique vocabulary. There are two really good examples of his attitude through his wit, and the first one is a more base one. It's the one where he's backstage at that festival, and he goes, "What is it? I want to optimist. I want to do positive music. Me, I'm an optimist. Not like all these twats down here writing music, and I'm in pain. I'm in pain. My ears are in pain listening to you twat. My ears are in pain listening to you." I thought it was brilliant. And then that great interview off that Live Forever documentary, where he says, would Oasis have been as successful without Noel? And he goes, I don't know. It's like saying, would Jesus Christ be a pervert if he had a bag of kiss on his head?
I don't remember that bit.
What? Would Jesus Christ be a pervert if he had a bag of crisps on his head? That is beyond his art and his pomp levels of
that, I reckon,
surreal thinking.
I think people now are starting to realise how funny Liam Gallagher is, because now he's got to do interviews. Before, it was Noel doing the majority of them and being really funny, and Liam seemed like quite, angry and arrogant and fighting photographers and that. But he was well funny.
Well, what people have realised, and it's taken them a long time, and Oasis fans always knew this, but it's taken the general public a while, is that Liam's in on the joke. He gets it. He's playing a character called Liam Gallagher, which is a version of himself, but he's doing it with a knowing wink. And I think it's probably taken him having that solo career after BDI for people to kind of realise, he's kind of in on the joke. He's playing up to it. And this is this great performance, and we should all enjoy it. Yeah.
And the thing with Noel as well is that, both of them. When you're a teenager as well, and you're being told to do all the time by teachers and stuff, and your parents and that, and then the best band in the world are being interviewed, and it just sums them up for me. That bit where what was it he'd said about everyone in the House of Parliament's on coke and all heroin addicts and that. And then there was press outside his house for 3 days, and he opens the door, and it was just the way that it's the way that he goes, well, they asked me a question, that was my answer. If you don't want to ask me don't want to like my answers, don't fucking ask me any questions. There's nothing you or anyone can do about it. And I remember thinking, hey, he's right, what are they going to do about it? They can't do anything about it. There's that thing as well when Liam left the band. It's on a couple of videos when he left the band, he walked off the tour, and it was Jeremy Vine knocked on his door. Yes, that sums up how funny he is. He goes, can you come out and have a chat, please, Liam? He goes, I'm a fuck, mate, it's raining. I'm a fuck, mate, it's raining. Everyone else would be like, the BBC are interviewing me. Well, what should I say? How should I project myself to the world? I'm a fuck, mate, it's raining.
But I think they were important, vehicles of social change. And if you look at our relationship in this country, the class system is huge and endures. And you only need to look at the sorts of people who end up in power and end up interviewing people on the BBC to see that. The 90s was our version of the 60s, really.
Yeah.
There was kind of a lot of social change. There was a lot of political change. Obviously, the economy was growing, and that kind of underpinned a lot of that stuff. But Britain was kind of coming out of itself in that era. It became more tolerant and open and everything. Also, in that is a kind of that slow erosion of deference towards people with better accents, or perceived to be better accents, and perceived to be better backgrounds. And Oasis was so important in just saying, I don't care how posh you are and you're knocking on my door, or what institution you're from, I'm living my own life in my own way, and you can piss off. And that's a really important thing for people to see happen. And it's not disrespect for the sake of it. But, they're knocking on his door. He's got every right to tell them where to go. And I just think that attitude, I think it's so important. It's so liberating for people. People feel so constrained by the house they grew up in, or the income of their parents, or, that there's perceived setbacks. And they're real setbacks as well, but they can kind of hold you in a prison of a lack of ambition, and they limit your horizons. People like Oasis said to people from backgrounds like mine, you can go on and do stuff. You can do it.
Yeah, well,
if you've got talent and you work hard, you can conquer the world. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, there was that documentary about Be Here Now. That's the thing as well, you forget. How big Oasis were. There was a documentary about their album coming out. Think about that now. Think about a band now, an album coming out, and there being a BBC One documentary special. It was amazing. And and there was a bit in it where Noel was interviewed, and I remember it clear as day, the bit where he goes, and you've probably seen it as well, and it sums up what you're saying there, is he said that his mum always drummed into them that you're no worse, you're no better, you're no different from anyone else. Just the same as anyone else, you can achieve whatever you want as long as you believe in it enough. And I remember watching that, and I would have been 16, doing my GCSEs, and going, fuck, no one said that to me. No one said that. Yeah. My dad says, well, they go to a better school than you, mate. You're fucked. That's what my dad says. So to hear Noel Gallagher say that, you're like, wow. And I still remember it and think about it probably once a month now. Didn't Kevin Bridges, he remembered that Noel Gallagher saying something like that in an interview, and that made him then do stand-up.
You know what?
Because he didn't have the guts to do it.
This is surreal. I was just about to mention Kevin Bridges. How odd is this, right? I went to see his last tour, and we watched his DVD the other night, and the opening credits of it are him going to the Stand Comedy Club.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And it's What's the Story?
Yeah.
And I was like, how cool to kind of wear that as an influence.
Yeah.
Because actually, I think there are loads of us who went on to do things that aren't music related. Listening to Oasis didn't make me want to be in a band.
No.
It made me want to listen to music like that, and it made me want to go to gigs. But it was never something I was going to do. I play the piano and I'm musical, but I never had the desire to be in a band. But with stand-up and stuff, if I'm on the way to a gig, I'll listen to Oasis. I find it such motivating music, and I find the attitude towards it motivates me to be creative in my own way. And I'm sure there are people out there. It was the same when I worked in politics. I would kind of listen to Oasis as a motivating factor, and I bet there'll be millions of people, from sports people to people just with all sorts of different jobs.
Yeah.
And it'd be true of other music as well, but I think Oasis is really motivating music. It gives you something. It makes you want to get out of bed. It's great.
I don't know, like a lot of people, I have that constant voice in your head going, you can't do it, you're shit, mate, you're shit, you're shit. Oasis, it sort of drowns that out. There's something about it, like Supersonic makes you walk differently. I've never said that before, but I think that really sums it up. But I like to take that literally, not that bit, but what you're saying about listening to Oasis. That I have a very clear memory. My second ever gig in London, my first gig was the King's Head, and I thought you had to be drunk to do stand up, so I was hammered. So I drank 6 cans of lager on the train to do a 5-minute open spot at the King's Head, because I thought, because my first gig I was drunk, that worked. So my mum said, "What, you're going to do that every gig, are you?" All right.
Great life.
So so my second ever gig though was the Comedy Caf, and I was, which is in East London, if people don't know it, and it was, down a back street. And it wasn't rough. It was a little bit rough, but I was, at the time, I would have been 19 or 20, and I'd only been to London like twice before, and I'd gone to London on my own. So I was shitting myself a bit, and it was like about my second ever gig in London. Like proper shitting myself. I'm stone cold sober. My hands were shaking, and I remember going into the toilet in the Comedy Caf with my CD Walkman, me Discman, silver Sony. I think it had a 16-second anti-shock.
That was all bothered.
Yeah, that didn't work. But I still remember now. Every time I went in that toilet after, I remembered it. I remember sitting on the toilet with the seat down, just sitting on there. Didn't need to go to the toilet, just needed to be on my own. And putting on Supersonic on the definitely maybe on the Discman, listening to Supersonic and Cigarettes and Alcohol and Live Forever, and then going, right, I think I can now go and die on my ass. I think I now have the courage. But I would have been a comedian if Oasis never existed. I would have, but I think it would have definitely would have took me longer. I think.
Yeah, I just think those things have such an effect. You're basically medicating with Oasis.
Yeah, I still am.
You'd have found something else, but the Oasis hits a spot in the way that your favourite lager does, or if you're in the mood for a curry or whatever it is. You know, when you need that thing, and I think that's what... There's something indefinable about it. The songs are really catchy. That's the crucial thing. The songs sound great. They are a mix of kind of the Beatles, the Who, the Pistols, and all sorts of things. And glam rock. There's that. They wear their influences and they're open about them. So they sort of learn the lessons from other people. But it is the mixture of Liam's voice and Noel's backing vocals and Noel's guitar. There's a perfection in it.
Yeah, the melodies
that other bands don't give you.
Yeah, I remember that. There was something about Cast No Shadow, that harmony of Noel and Liam in Cast No Shadow. Yeah. Honestly, I put that on the jukebox in the Pomfret, in the pub, in Toaster, so many times that I remember every time it come on, like a chorus of old men going, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" Because I didn't own the album. When I think how many times I put it on the fucking jukebox, could have bought the album 25 times, but I didn't have the album.
Why were you going into pubs at that age and putting songs on jukeboxes?
Because Roy, the landlord, he looked at profit margins above age limit. God bless him. May he rest in peace. Yeah, I know. Roy.
So were you underage drinking, or were you just like the pub kid?
No, there was loads of us. The pub was full of us. It was like a youth club with lager.
Great.
Brilliant. And Oasis on, full blast all the time. What's the story? It was just on constantly. But at that time as well, because like you said it earlier, you mentioned Chris Evans earlier. That's important to remember at that time as well. They talk about Cool Britannia. And it wasn't just Oasis. So like you said, there's a good description you said. There needs to be a few things. And there was art all over the news. The Turner Prize was Damien Hirst, the shark in the tank. That was all over the news. There was Kate Moss, was this young English model that was now a global icon. Chris Evans on the radio, pre him being, quite a detestable cunt. But back when...
Oh, hold on a second.
Back...
He's always been lovely to me.
Has he? Well, you could be the only one.
He's a very generous host.
You could be the only one. He from what I've heard. But he... On the radio, though, it's like, if you listen to him now, he's undoubtedly a brilliant radio host, undoubtedly. But you forget now, in the 90s, he was like... There'd be some mornings he weren't on because he'd been banned from a day, or he'd be given a disciplinary. Every day, it was like he could be sacked every day. It was quite edgy. So there was him doing that. I remember one day he started talking about the Beatles, and then he just went, "I'm sick of us celebrating people when they're dead. Why do we always wait until someone dies? So before something else happens to Paul McCartney or one of the other Beatles, I'm going to play some Beatles." And he just played, I think he played like 10 Beatles songs in a row on Radio 1. He must have got bollocked for that.
Yeah, but you remembered it. This was like the golden era. And it was society then. If you think about the things that were acceptable to talk about and do, we now live in quite a kind of vain era where it's all selfies and Instagram, and a lot of that is, some of it is positive because it's an emphasis on health and stuff, but a lot of it is really superficial. Back then, like, underage drinking was rife. To sort of be drunk on air was kind of, it was a far more rock and roll era. It was the last kind of free era, really, because after that things have become very serious, some for very good reason. But yeah, that was a real rock and roll era. And on top of that, you had the Premier League had started in 1992 here, and football began to change.
Yeah.
Italia 90 was crucial in the kind of the mainstream appeal of football and taking it away from hooliganism. Euro 96 is then hosted here.
That was euphoric. That combined with...
It was euphoric for a number of reasons. Yeah, it was hosted here. England did well, and it wasn't marred by the hooligan problem that people really thought it was going to be. And that's a subtext to that whole summer. And on top of that, you had, after 18 years of the Tories, a Labour leader that had mass appeal, and that had really connected with the public and has this huge victory a year later. And if you think about those 2 or 3 years, from 94 to 97, Tony Blair becomes leader of the Labour Party in 1994, and that's when Definitely Maybe comes out. And in 1997, he becomes Prime Minister with this whacking great majority, and Be Here Now comes out. And in those 3 years... You've had Euro 96, Britpop. It all happened in such a short space of time. It was dizzying.
Yeah, I thought it was. That's just, in some ways now it's quite galling. I just thought that was what it was like to be a teenager, because you didn't know any different.
That was the norm.
You thought this is what.
It's only now. It's only with the distance of retrospect you go, oh God, we were so lucky.
Yeah, because it felt like things were getting better and better and better, and I didn't know about politics in the way you did. But even I knew nothing about it. But I know it's easy to say now, but I honestly felt like things were changing. The world was getting better. It felt like that. In England, it did, because it was on the news. It was, this is getting better, and look at the art, and Oasis are #1 here, and they're going to America, and all of that. And then, I mean, for you, because what age did you join the Labour Party?
I joined Labour when I was 15, so...
Hang on.
Which is the earliest you can join, by the way. I tried to join when I was 14. I wasn't allowed. I got into it really young.
So...
but of course, the context, and it is important to make the context, is the reason why this was such a bonkers era with all this stuff happening, and why that was not the norm, was basically since the 60s, the 60s were this huge, amazing period.
Yeah.
And then basically from the 70s onward, life had been terrible.
Yeah.
The end of the 70s were the winter of discontent, and then 10 years of Thatcher and the deindustrialisation of the country. Just huge parts. Some people made a lot of money. A lot of people were on the dole. Mass unemployment. And being skint was just the reality for the best part of 2 decades for people. It was terrible, particularly for most working class people. So then this thing happens where all your things are happening at once. Football's great, music's great. You got rid of the, if you wanted to get rid of the Tories, then you got rid of them in the most spectacular way. So it was from one extreme to the other. It wasn't that things were kind of okay and then they got really good. Things had been shit.
Yeah.
Terrible. Really, really bad.
And even as a young kid, you were aware of it, just hearing your parents watching the news going, oh, fuck, what? Yeah. I didn't know anything about
industrial
it.
strife, mass riots, like it was just football hooliganism. You know, this wasn't just about politics. Like society was on the edge for a long time, and it was bleak. People's lives were crap. They didn't have any hope. They were paid, you know, before 1998 or 1999, there was no minimum wage. You could literally be paid anything, 50p an hour legally. It's bonkers how bad life was for people. And obviously, for all the progress we've made, we have to be realistic about how life is still terrible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that period felt like, firstly, things did change, but secondly, it was that optimism was given to this country after so long.
Yeah.
And all that together was just, oh my word. It felt like we were like a dog that had been let off the lead.
Yeah.
Just
and
like
the constant
soundtrack. Bounding down the beach with a string of sausages in our mouth.
Saliva everywhere. Not caring. Just uninhibited saliva.
Wild abandon, just the freedom.
And it wasn't just that. We're going on about Oasis, but there was even like middle of the road bands were releasing brilliant stuff. Just everything. Like every now and again, I told you once I disappeared down a 90s wormhole recently. But you listen to it and I'm fucking imagine being a teenager listening to Cast.
Yeah.
And Full Blast and Shed 7 and Blur and all that.
Oh.
And Pulp.
The Verve.
Verve and Pulp. And
really fantastic high quality music as well. And obviously because of the movement there was a lot of stuff that was kind of okay that got swept along with it. But the calibre of that, of Shed 7,
there's a real sound to all of that as well. Sometimes when it comes on the radio, a real 90s song comes on the radio, I don't know what it is about it. It was a bit more, more sort of, not pompous, but more fucking celebratory and more ballsy than a lot, more unapologetic, just fucking went for it, didn't it? All Shed 7
that
and
mixture
all
of
that.
confidence and hope, isn't it? Like it sounds self-confident.
Yes, that's it, yeah.
So they've got a bit of arrogance, which is attractive.
Yeah.
And it's really positive, upbeat stuff. I listen to, if I'm working during the day, I find it really hard to work when there's music on. But basically, the only things I've figured out I can be productive to are the Stone Roses.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect music to work to. Or I just put Absolute Radio 90s on. Unless it's Christmas, and then I have Magic Christmas on from the 20th of November to the end of December. But during the year, Absolute Radio 90s on during the day, it is.
Yeah.
And it reminds you of, and it's not just the nostalgia. I mean, every generation is nostalgic, of course, because that's part of the human experience. But there was something particularly positive about I feel bad for kids who grew up in the noughties and stuff, because all they've known is like a massive recession.
Yeah.
And then, now, growing up now, the kids haven't been able to go to school for a year. People haven't been able to go to university for a year and a half. Terrible period to grow up in.
Well, I remember, so that section up to 97, and then it's kind of like now, if you did it story-wise, it's got quite a weird, neat ending to it, I think, of like then Be Here Now came out of All the Promise, and up until even when Do You Know What I Mean was out, the first single, that was massive, and everyone was like, yeah, it's great.
So good.
And then when the album came out for a day, it was just shit. And now that album came out on the day I got my GCSE results.
No way.
So again, it was like Oasis were made for me. What's the Story came out 2 days before my 15th birthday, and Be Here Now on the day of my GCSE results. We went and got our results, and then we got the bus into Northampton HMV. I went and got Be Here Now, and we went to Tasha Davis's house because she had a free house. Well, it was in the day, wasn't it? It was in the day, so her mum was at work. So there was about 40 of us in her house, everywhere, hammered with Be Here Now full blast.
Brilliant.
And then it kind of, after that, it just, I don't know what, it just dwindled away. And then there was Princess Diana, and then everyone actually listened to us Be Here Now for the third time and went, you know what?
I love it.
I love it.
It's great.
Because it's like Noel Gallagher said, it's a perfect expression of that time. But he also said one of his, I think it was Coyley, said to him, Be Here Now should have came with a sticker on it saying they should only be played once.
I think it's a brilliant album. I stand by it as a great album. I think it's majestic. And some of those songs, I mean, All Around the World was one of the first songs he wrote.
Yeah.
So it's not that the songwriting was bad. It's just, you can have arguments about whether they should have made the master plan the third album and whether they should have spunked all those B-sides as early. But that's part of the attraction of them. They were this firework display.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
They went hard and fast.
Do you
think that was the right thing to do?
Do you think they would have been as loved if they hadn't had all those B-sides? Because that was part of it. There was Oasis for the general public that, they crossed into the mainstream. But then there was still, if you were a massive fan of them, a huge music fan and a big fan of them, you felt like there were songs just for you, the B-sides, that you had to put the effort in. And every time you bought a single, it was like a third of an album. There was three great tracks.
Good. The quality, I think, is it on Whatever? The B-sides are like
Half the World Away.
What's the other one? The Whatever single is incredible as a kind of like basically half an album, which you'd have got for 99p the day it came out.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, in those days, it was a single come out, and you'd have a radio remix, a dance remix, and maybe a cover version or a live track. That was all B-sides were. Version. Oasis were one of the only ones doing, because they thought it was never going to end.
Also, I think they always treated their fans with respect. Oasis were never that expensive to see live. I was going through my old... we were clearing out the flat the other day, and I found my old ticket stubs. And the last time I went to see them was on one of their last ever gigs at Wembley Stadium on the 9th of July.
I went to that.
2009.
I didn't...
It was 50 quid! 50 quid to stand on the pitch.
Hang on, and
see Oasis at Wembley.
And the lineup was The Enemy, Reverend and the Makers, Kasabian.
It was a festival. It was amazing, right? So they always treat their fans with respect, and part of that was writing really good B-sides and putting them out there. And the other thing I think with that was that songs like Champagne Supernova, right, weren't a single.
Yeah.
Now that is one of their best-known songs. Radio and telly and the public couldn't get enough of them, so even their B-sides were out there. In fact, I bet if you were to ask people on like Pointless or Family Fortunes or something to name singles, they would name album tracks.
It was.
Because there was Morning Glory's not a single in this country. So there would be songs people would name, I think. Am I right?
Yeah.
I think that was just an album track.
Yeah.
People would end up naming songs, Cast No Shadow, that weren't released as singles because even their album tracks, even their B-sides were just massive.
Morning Glory, I think the only one you don't hear on the radio regular is Hey Now. Apart from that, all the others... All of them.
Oh, I love Hey Now.
All of them are on regular. And then the B-sides, like Acquiesce and stuff like that.
Oh, my God.
That is...
Why did they never... I mean, equally, it's really easy to go. I think that you get into trouble with counterfactuals. You go, had they released Acquiesce, would they be as critically da-da-da-da-da?
Yeah.
So let's say they don't release Acquiesce. Let's say they release Acquiesce. That means they might not release Don't Look Back in Anger. And then we'd all be here years later going, how was that a B-side? Or how was that an album track? In the end, they put all their stuff out there. It's all there to be judged. And I think, by and large, you'll get a fair hearing of it.
Right.
Because it's such an amazing body of work.
Funny you should say this. I had this prepared for you. I wanted to see... I don't often do any prep for this. Probably anyone who's listened to these, that would be apparent. But here I have... The only prep I've done is stuff like watch a Jam documentary, stuff like that. So it's quite a good prep. Oh, I'll say that. I watched Supersonic yesterday, half of it. Kids came back. Just to brush up. I've got to say again, I think a couple of my mates, you've probably got mates as well, that you've gone on about Oasis so much, and they're not Oasis fans, but every now and again they'll watch something or hear something and text you and go, I watched Supersonic and how great it is. Just some of the quotes, again, we're talking about how positive they are. I remember a bit Noel Gallagher said about how famous they got and saying, we just didn't give a fuck. Whole fame and all of that, he said, we treated it with the contempt it deserved. Oh, it's poetic.
He is a great storyteller, Noel.
Yeah.
And he's really good at putting Oasis in context. And when I think about this, about why hasn't there been... I guess the Arctic Monkeys were massive, but and the Libertines, but they don't have that place in the heart of the nation that Oasis had. And they didn't have the huge mass appeal. They don't have those Nebworth moments and things.
No.
It's partly because, and again, there are other things underpinning this, is downloading music has transformed our relationship with it.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other things, because you can't make money off albums. Really, it's only middle-class bands that can afford to tour because you're not getting any money in the door. So there's that kind of been the class problem in modern music. But Noel Gallagher's really good at this sort of stuff, at telling that story. We were the last big band, right, before the dawn of the internet.
Yeah, that bit at the end. It's quite emotional, that bit at the end. It's Supersonic. It really summed up.
But it's such a good point, and he's really good. You had to queue up, right, to get our albums.
Yeah.
And I think there is something in that. There's definitely... It's not just the financial thing. There is an emotional connection with those things. And Oasis, they weren't just influenced in their music. They were influenced in their cover art and
they're out. They're singles.
You wanted to look at the artwork and you wanted to read the notes and stuff. The whole product was really high quality.
Well, me and you just the other day were texting each other. You text me. We're just texting each other generally before I asked you to come on and you text me back. Oh, your timing's impeccable. And text me a photo of a Liam Gallagher vinyl that you've had framed and put on the wall, and I text you a framed photo of the What's the Story Morning Glory album cover I've got on my wall, because their albums and singles and stuff look cool and look like posters you want on your wall.
The artwork
you don't get that when you download stuff.
Well, that's true. And whenever I'm on Brewer Street in Soho, I'm sure you have the same thing. Yeah. I only realised this a few years ago that it was Tom Parry, the comedian, who told me that was. I always had just presumed it was in Manchester.
Yeah,
I guess for obvious reasons. That cover of What's the Story, and now those flats are still off in the distance. There's a record shop there. It's not Selector Disc anymore. It's, I think, something Records. And every time I walk, if I'm in that part of London, I will deliberately detour down that road just to walk effectively through the What's the Story Morning Glory cover art.
Do you know what I did recently in Manchester? I was doing the Comedy Store Manchester, and I thought, I know that it's not there anymore, but I might go and see where it is, just so I'm at the boardwalk.
Yes. So what is the building still there, or is it like a new building?
The building's still there, and do you know where it is? It's the fucking under those arches opposite the Manchester Comedy Store. It's next to where I always park. So I've walked past it probably 50 times and not realised that's it. And there's a blue plaque on there as well.
Because I googled it not long ago. Because the Hacienda is now flat, so they've got like a sign on the side, but it's not the building, and I think that's a real shame. But if it's the same exterior...
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Well, it's under the arches,
next time I go,
they can't redo that.
I can't believe it didn't.
But,
magnificent.
So, the other quote I like of Noel Gallagher, just a quick one. I like the one where he's on about... it's at VH1 Behind the Music. Oasis is a great Oasis documentary. And he says, well, they went off touring, they got together, went off on the first tour, and he goes, we didn't know if we were going to last 5 months or 5 years, but we fucking knew we were going to have a good time finding out.
Well, that's it. There are so many different, there are different sort of baskets of Noel Gallagher quotes. One is just those great, we were going to fucking have it, and they're great on documentaries. There is the other one where he's got the kind of simultaneously matter-of-fact, but hugely self-aggrandizing.
Yeah.
He'll go, right, do you know what I mean, right? It's 7.5 minutes long. And I wrote that in 2.5 minutes, right? I ask you, what is all that about?
He goes...
Oh, there's always like a Johnny Marr reference. I wrote Live Forever on the same guitar, by the way, that Johnny Marr wrote How Soon Is Now. And you just got, he's so good at, putting Oasis into a context and even his stories and his quotes about it.
And the way he goes, and he's quite, I wouldn't be able to do that, but he says I wouldn't change any of it. Like Be Here Now, he says, it's the sound of 5 blokes off their heads on coke, but but he says it's the perfect expression of its time, and I wouldn't change any of it. It's like that bit where he's like, they were built up, they could have been the biggest band in the universe if that album delivered, and he finds it funny because I just find it funny. Now, how many albums that sold? It sold more than most bands will sell in their whole career, and I find it funny. I
love that album. I love that it's big and pompous and mad and overblown, and I think the songs are great. I think it is a great album. I know he sort of Mickey takes it. I think Liam is more
he loves
Be
it.
Here Now. Yeah,
From
it's
the
great.
interviews I've heard.
It's a really good album. I don't buy into this narrative that in retrospect it's
Noel
really...
Gallagher said about All Around the World. He goes, somewhere there's a tape machine and it's still going. here's the prep I've done though. But you say that about Be Here Now. I've rewritten the track list of Be Here Now, right?
Yeah.
I reckon this is the album that would have delivered and stood up, and like it would have delivered the hype. It would have stood up to the hype, because it was I don't think, to be honest, actually, I don't think whatever they did would have been quite good enough, because the hype was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was impossible to meet that.
It was on the news nearly every day, and they weren't allowed to show the album cover. They had to have the handover. Just ridiculous. But this. So what? Here's the rules. Here's the parameters I've set. I'm allowed to use B-sides off of What's the Story, right? So you can imagine if What's the Story, that album would have been as big, arguably, without a lot of them B-sides, because just every track on the album was so good.
Okay.
So I'm allowed to use any of them. So what I've gone with, track 1. Do you know what I mean? I've stayed with that for an opener.
Yes. I'm so pleased you did that.
I love that story as well, about he's in the meeting and it's got all the radio players and all sort of execs and stuff like that, and they do that must be horrible. They do a play of the new single, and he says there's a point where they start playing it and they all start a stopwatch. Generally they have to do that for every song, but when they did it on Do You Know What I Mean, it was about a minute and it was still just feedback and helicopters. He's like, he said it was only then it dawned on me, this is fucking out of order. So I'm gonna go track 1, Do You Know What I Mean? Track 2, Acquiesce. Okay. Think of that as the start of an album. Track 3.
Okay, let me just, I don't want to stop you in your tracks, but I think My Big Mouth is a phenomenal second track on the album, and that is like a punch you in the face song.
All right, hang on, I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm
not saying Acquiesce shouldn't be on there, but I love My Big Mouth as a second track.
They played that at Nebworth, so they must have loved it.
They did, yeah.
That was in their What's the Story Morning Glory era, so it's that level. So you're right.
I think it's great. I think it's rowdy. And it's the only song of that type, really, they've got.
Yeah, I've
that big introduction is like...
All right.
It doesn't sound like Oasis.
Put that down the bottom. I was going to tell you the ones
Guns
you
N'
could
Roses
add
song
back
at the start,
in.
though, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah.
It's like boxing ring walk music.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to have to take one out later on. I'm happy with that. Here we go. So Do You Know What I Mean? Track 2, My Big Mouth. Track 3, Acquiesce.
Okay.
Right, track 4, see what you think of this. I think underrated, should have been on the album in the first place. Stay Young, which was
that's a great song.
B-side on Do You Know What I Mean?
It's a brilliant song. But does Stand By Me stay on the album?
I'll get into that. Track 5, Round Our Way. Round Our Way. Underrated. I'm happy. I'm happy to let that go.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take that out for My Big Mouth then, for now. Okay. But I do think it's a great song. Track. Right. So the next track, Stand By Me.
Okay,
now,
good.
You'd keep that on?
That's great song.
Okay.
That's fantastic.
All right, so
I think that's one of their best songs, actually.
Do you?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Okay, so I've swapped.
And really emotional, and like the what's the word I'm looking for? The point behind it, I guess. You know, the intent behind it is really sweet.
Yeah, it's a good song.
When you think of like those arms round each other Oasis songs, that's really one of them.
Yeah. I think that suffered a bit. That song is because it started to be the point where people were going, I don't think it's as good as What's the Story.
You know what bit I love in it? I love the bit, if you're leaving, will you take me with you? I'm tired of talking on my phone. You know, when he uses the mouth as an instrument.
Yeah.
So he put words together that sound like a sort of drum beat. Tired of talking. You know, he does that a lot, Noel. It's about the sound of the words, not necessarily the meaning a lot of the time.
That's a cracking description of he uses his mouth as an instrument. That's I think what I love so much about Cast No Shadow, the backing vocals of Noel. Bound with all the weight of all. It's like his singing is like an instrument, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's using it like a violin.
Yes. That's exactly it. Yeah. You've cleared up a lot for me on this. Should have done this earlier. I mean, I know I love Oasis, but you've really helped me articulate it. So Stand By Me still on there, and I made a meal and threw it up on Sunday. That's cracking as well.
What a line.
Yeah. I love his harmonies on that. But yeah, I think Stand By Me suffered a bit because by then sort of the backlash against them has sort of started, hadn't it? They're sort of going, it's not as good as What's the Story. So I don't think that gets the credit it deserves, Stand By Me. You're right. Now, I would keep on, don't you think about this, I Hope I Think I Know.
Oh, yes, brilliant.
Yeah.
Love it.
I would keep that on there. Next track, Head Shrinker.
Oh, nice. That feels so...
That's really
that feels
old.
like a song from a very different era.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe that doesn't go in. But...
I think you've been a bit liberal with your timescales.
No, that is off. That's off. That is off B-side on What's the Story era, but it was really old then. So you're right.
It feels very... And the way they perform it, it feels very definitely maybe.
Yeah, it does. It might stand... Yeah.
I bet they played that at the King Tut's Wawa Hut, you know.
Yeah.
It feels like I've seen it on that footage.
Right, that's one. I'll put a question mark next to it.
You little sneak.
No, but I could put something back in. Anyway, so next track, Rocking Chair.
Oh, lovely.
Lovely. So what I've done, I've tried to think about the way the album flows. I've gone up. I'm just bringing you down a bit now. Then I'm flowing into Don't Go Away. That's got to stay on there.
Oh, you know what? I'm so pleased you left that in because I think that and Rocking Chair are kind of in a similar wheelhouse.
Yeah,
and I was worried you were going to take out Don't Go Away is beautiful.
I think that's one of my favourite Oasis songs of all time, yes.
Oh, it's lovely.
That flow nicely into each other. Then I'm going to flow into The Master Plan, Give Noel his song.
Oh, my word.
And then I'm going to end on All Around the World and edit off about half an hour of it.
Which still leaves about half an hour.
So I'm going to end on a big euphoric All Around the World and then just end on it. And no reprise. No, it's getting better, man. It's getting better.
But you're losing Magic Pie, The Girl in the Dirty Shirt. Be Here Now.
I've got to say, I think I've made it clear how big an Oasis fan I am. I really don't like Girl in the Dirty Shirt. I don't know what it is about that.
You know what? There's a couple of songs on there that I know what you mean, and that's one of them. But I heard, and I don't know if you've heard this, you can get it on, I think it's available on Spotify, Oasis for Piano. I don't know if you've ever come across this.
No.
And it's, this is going to change your life, and it's going to change the way you look at some of these songs. So it's a guy, I forget his name, but he's just done loads of, and he's done a Be Here Now just on piano, right? And that is the best one. There's something about the songs on Be Here Now that really suit being played on a piano. And he's not just played them on the piano, he's underlaid, all the bass bits are done on a piano, and so it's just this, like a symphony on a piano. The ones that really stand out on that album played on piano are The Girl in the Dirty Shirt and Magic Pie, and I think maybe it's just the way that this guy's arranged them. But they are haunting versions of these songs. I'll send you the link after this, and maybe you can put the link in the blurb or the show notes or whatever you call it so that other people can find it. But if you go on Spotify and type in Oasis for Piano, and he's done loads of other ones, but he did the whole of Be Here Now on piano, and oh my God.
Right.
That is like, if you ever just need to relax, put that on. It's like something off a film soundtrack. It's got like an epic sound.
I think that's the thing. I think there are brilliant songs on Be Here Now that, like, Noel went and did a remix of Do You Know What I Mean? And if all of them were done like that, it could have been such a different album.
The brilliant deluxe editions that came out the year when he had all the Mystique demos for Be Here Now. That I loved that, and I still, for a while, would listen to the demos over listening to the album.
Yeah,
because it was like Noel had done a whole cover version. It was great. They were almost like those Johnny Cash versions, but of Oasis songs.
Yeah,
the sort of stripped-backed version of an album that was so overdone was so cool to listen to.
But if it wasn't, I'm saying this, but Be Here Now, like. It was the perfect expression of 97. It was. It just summed it up. You can't really change it. But I mean, I thought this would happen. We've not talked about them solo. We've not had a chance to talk about other bands you've got into. But we've sort of ended where we started, on Johnny Cash, which seems appropriate. But one thing I'd ask you to end on. Is there an Oasis song, we'll end with Oasis, is there an Oasis song that you don't think is known enough or given as much credit as it should be? You've probably said it there already, but if there is one.
You know what I really like, and I reappraised, I think some of their later stuff's brilliant. I think Heathen Chemistry is a really good album, and Don't Believe the Truth is a really good album, and I think there's some great songs on there. Standing on the Shoulders or Standing on the Shoulder, the great sort of miscommunication, even on the title of that album. But I think that is probably the most maligned album.
Yeah.
But there's some great songs on there, and I really love, and I love that they did it live, Gas Panic.
All right.
And if you mentioned him earlier, Kevin Bridges, his first Edinburgh show was called An Hour to Sing for Your Soul, which is a line, and the way Liam sings it is kind of, I think kind of funny version of Liam. An hour to sing for yourself. Really goes for it.
Yeah,
I think that's a great, weird song.
that was when
I loved Gas Panic. So I think that would be one.
Liam
We go,
started
they
to
did
sound
those
like
other
he was
songs.
doing an impression of himself on.
Yeah.
That was the problem, wasn't it?
Yeah. I love
There
Gas
was
Panic.
some
And I
great-
love Fucking in the Bushes. And that became their great walk-on
Yeah.
music, and Liam uses it now.
Still
Like,
uses it,
that
yeah.
is... Oh, man. And when it gets used in Snatch, it's great. But that was a different type of sound for them. And that and Gas Panic, they experimented a bit, and it worked. I thought they both sounded great.
Yeah.
So I guess Gas Panic would be my kind of...
Again,
niche,
B-side
deep
on
cut
Go Let It
suggestion.
Out, Let's All Make Believe. That's an unbelievable song.
Oh, well, what's the one? I love that B-side. As I saw on the breeze, that one. And it's got me on my knees. I got the fever.
Oh, yeah.
I love that song. That is really uplifting.
Yeah.
Really positive.
That's off of Be Here Now. Yeah, I've got that. I've
Yeah,
got that
so
written
maybe
down
that one,
here.
yeah. Maybe I Got the Fever would be
Yeah,
mine.
you could,
I
you
Got
could
the
have
Fever
that.
as a
You could
great
have that
B-side.
on the Be Here Now new track list if you want.
Yeah, fuck it. I mean,
We
we've
could
got
swap
that.
it for
You just
Headshrinker.
created a greatest hits album on your thing now.
Yeah.
But yes, I think Gas Panic is a good niche suggestion for something that's a bit different, but that's really good.
Lovely. Thanks, Forde. It has been.
Oh, mate, anytime.
It is, well,
happy to come back and do like a deep cut on BDI, which I think BDI was superb.
wow. I was going to say.
Like a true believer. So maybe we do a BDI episode.
Yeah, well, we've not discussed Oasis gigs you've been to, any of that. So there's a few now that I've spoke to people and gone, well, this is teed up a part 2. This is teed up a part 2.
Whenever you're ready.
I'll until the next time, Forde.
Yeah. Till next week.
Thanks, mate.
Ta-ra.